What's going on, YouTube? Thanks for tuning in to the all-wheel drive build series. Today we're doing something pretty basic. We're going to be taking apart the rear differential of the Honda Element / Honda CR-V rear differential. The reason I say both of those is because they are fairly similar, aside from a few of the clutch pack components. For a few years they interlap, or they cross over and have the same type of design. So right now we just cracked all the bolts off of the rear casing. There's about 2, 4, 6 of 12mm bolts like this one right here. They do have a little bit of rust on them from where they were sitting. So on the casing itself, on where you can see where the bolt goes in, and the very end, just hit it with some WD-40 as well as the bolt head as well. We just want to make sure that nothing strips and nothing is damaged upon possible repair. After that's done, it is being held by some RTV, so we just hit it with a little rubber mallet. And here we have the casing for the rear differential. These are the bolt holes location that I was telling you about. And here we have the actual rear differential. You'll notice on each side there is a little spacer / shim. You want to keep those on the corresponding side, of course. Everything is pretty clean in the casing, so we know that there wasn't a lot of fluid gunk buildup or anything. And this looks like a pretty much regular differential, you know? It doesn't look like anything out of this world. This is still technically an open differential, so what we're going to be doing is either installing a cheap phantom grip or even welding the diff. We aren't 100% sure yet, but that's something that we'll be experimenting with upon the future. Now, these are little rubber seals that go for the axles themselves. One, as you can see, is already broken and the spring has came out of the housing of it. And then the other one is a larger seal, and this goes to the passenger side. We're going to be replacing both of those because we want to have fresh seals, obviously. Alright guys, so we actually skipped forward a couple hours right now, then we'll jump back. I just wanted to mention real quick, although we did take off the rear housing of the differential for the Element rear diff, we're only going to be modifying that spline area by welding it. We're actually going to go tomorrow morning to Ricky Sellers at Sellers Racing Performance and have him weld that for us. I'm not going to go into depth of the actual clutch packs right now, because one thing that a lot of people have been telling me is, for example, use this kit with bigger shims or a larger spring to have a more of a higher pressure inside of the pump system and everything. Other people are saying just stick a pin within all of the clutches to have them all together. Some other people were saying apply like an air pressure to certain parts of the diff because it'll mimic an always locked differential. There was about 4 or 5 different methods for the clutch pack assembly since we're not using a wagon differential at this time. I want to experiment all of this. And to experiment this, we actually have to have the car running first. So to get the car running, we're just going to have a welded rear, but for the front clutch pack area, we'll put 100% stock for the time being, just so we can have basically a basis and then go from there. We're definitely going to be doing some modification in the future, as well as trying out a few different differentials, but for the time being, this is just how we want to go for it. Please bear with us that in the next couple of weeks we're going to do a lot of testing, but we want to start with this as our baseline. I have the front and the rear of the casing already painted. Obviously the center will be painted once everything is back together, since that's where the pump assembly goes. And over here I have all of the rusted bolts and components. I'm just going to top off with this rust converter, rust dissolver actually. And that should be good to sit for about 30 minutes, and then we can check back on it. Alright, so skip forward a couple hours again. Everything is sealed back up except for the rear half of the differential, since obviously like I mentioned, tomorrow morning we are going to Ricky Sellers and having him weld that up for us. I want to show you that real quick. And I don't know if you guys noticed on the first few clips, this whole top portion as well as the bolts were super rusted, and then after having it sat in that solution for a while, most of the rust came off. These used to be super rusted, and then what little is left is kind of like converted to this neutral color type thing. The case itself is actually really clean right now. We use some metallic hammered metal finish or whatever it's called from Rust-Oleum, and I have a fresh seal of RTV right here, as well as these bolts that were all rusted are also nice and clean. Then over here I've got the rear differential, the part that's getting welded tomorrow. We're gonna show you that tomorrow. And this is just the cover. On a side note, here is the all-wheel drive B-Series transmission out of the CR-V. So this, we just pressure washed it today. We actually used some oven cleaner to let it sit for about 5 minutes on and take off all the caked on grease, or take it all off. And this is super clean right now. The one thing that I was missing was the shift selector cables. I have the shifter, just not the actual cables that go onto here. Don't worry, I'll find those. And the whole casing is super clean. So after we have the rear differential all put back together, welded and RTV'd back on, we're actually gonna start tearing open the all-wheel drive transmission, because although we're gonna be having a locking rear end, we wanna have LSD in the front as well. And there are a few kits online which cost about $1,200 to $1,300 for the LSD. We're gonna use a cheaper method that for about $70 you can do it at home, super easy, which is actually the old style LSD that was in this car, the 660 horsepower Integra. And I'll insert the clips here. Of it doing crazy pulls 100% of the time. It was always locked both sides. So it should be more than enough for our little street build for the time being, since we are doing the all-wheel drive on a budget. Obviously, in the future, if you're doing a lot more power, you can upgrade, just like I upgraded on this, although it wasn't necessary, but it's always nice to have quality components when you can afford, or when you want to have a more secure type of setup. On another side note, those of you who have been subscribed and are up to date on the whole build, this is the B20 block that we've been working on. I'm waiting on some piston rings to come in so I can start assembling the motor. Obviously, I still have to do the notching of the sleeves for the bottom to clear the rod, and obviously I'm going to do a whole video on that, since a lot of people have been asking how to actually notch a sleeve. So we're going to be doing that. Stay tuned. This is probably going to happen in the next week and a half. We are still waiting on the piston rings, so that's the next big thing. While we had everything open and the diff out of the actual casing, I wanted to demonstrate something right now, the difference between having the open differential and a lock differential. If you guys ever look at old school ways of having a locking rear end on like Miatas or 240s that want to do drifting for cheap, they weld the diff, and when you turn, you'll hear the rear wheels chirping. That's because when you're turning, the inside wheel has to turn less than the outside wheel for it to be a smooth turn. But when it's locked, it always has the same rotation on each side. So you'll hear that chirp, 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 chirp. My old Miata actually used to do it. So I want to demonstrate real quick the rear differential. I just have it kind of thrown in there at the moment. Using the open differential. Here, let me set this down on the tripod real quick. So right now, I'm putting the rear diff into the case. And by spinning the front, it's gonna spin the whole assembly. It's gonna drive off of a gear that's inside of here. It's gonna drive this large gear. And this, since it's connecting to the housing, will then turn both sides. Now, this is still an open differential. So if you have some type of opposition on one side, for example, right here, this is gonna be held still. I can still turn the main shaft and hold the axle. The same should go for this side. I'm gonna hold this part. Now this one right here is spinning, as well as the main shaft is spinning, but I'm holding this side. So what a locking rear differential, or welding the differential, is gonna do is I'm gonna turn them both, and even when there is force or no force applied, both sides will be locked. So as you can see right here, there's no force on either one of the axles, so they're both turning. If you can tell that this one is turning, but it is. And that's what the welded diff will do. No matter if I'm turning or going straight or losing grip, for some reason, both axles are gonna be spinning. And that's pretty much why people do the LSDs. And the same goes for the front end. If you have an open differential, you won't have that same locking ability in the front or in the rear. Nick's car coming together. Whew. Manifolds and collectors are on. About to lay down some dimes on the diff. This is just as good as a regular LSD, right?
Totally.
Yeah. Real nice. So between that in the rear and the phantom grip in the front, should have all 4 wheels spinning.
If it makes enough power.
I mean, I don't know if it's gonna do all that, but.
Hell yeah.
Should lift the CRX and make it an off-roading car with these. Ended up just cleaning the whole assembly with some brake cleaner to get rid of any debris that was in there, and putting a little bit of oil on all the bearings, the top and the bottom. Obviously this is going to get full diff fluid from Honda specifically for the case and everything once we reassemble that. And as you can see, it's all welded up right here in the center. So now it is mimicking a limited slip differential. This is basically what a lot of drift people do. So I'm going to set this in the case real quick and show you how both sides will turn in opposed to how it did last night. All right, so here we have the differential along with the case and the axles. We aren't going to be doing the final assembly using the RTV right now, but we are going to be putting it into the case and have the cover back on as well. Remember that we mentioned that we have these little shims on each side, the corresponding one for how the diff came out. So we're going to set this on each side. And then this goes into the diff assembly. Just how it came out. Go. Now we're gonna put the cover back on. And like I mentioned, this is only a loose assembly. We're not gonna be doing the RTV at the moment. Just gonna put a couple bolts in there just to have it hold it in place. Just holding the case snug. Put one axle in. So one turns with the other one, obviously, as you can see right there. When I'm spinning the front, they both turn. Hold one still, and it doesn't turn at all. Let it go, turns. Hold one still, the other one resists the turn, which is exactly what the welded diff is gonna be doing. Holding it so they both turn together and can evenly apply the force onto both wheels. The splines were a little bit rough going into the differential itself because of some wear that was on the axles. I was able to clean up the splines and they slide in perfectly now. And I am waiting on a few seals so then I can go ahead and put the case back together with the RTV. That should be here in a day or two. And that pretty much sums up the episode for today on the how to build your all-wheel drive Honda build. We are going to be doing a lot more updates. I'm trying to do about 3 to 4 episodes of this specific build a week. We're going to try our best to get out as much as we can. The next thing we're going to be doing is I have a phantom grip on the way for the transmission because we're going to be doing the welded rear and the phantom grip inside of the transmission. And there is also a little bit of modification that you can do to the shift fork, especially 1 and 2, because they do tend to bend under a lot of power, or anything more than stock at least. So we are going to be showing you the whole process on that. Please stay tuned. If you aren't already subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe and notification bell. And if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button for us. And let us know what you think in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.